Tom and Jerry, Han and Chewie, Woody and Buzz. These perfectly matched duos together rose above the sum of their collective parts to become something iconic. And that is certainly the case with today's topic, Sonny and Cher. I'm your host, Nostalgic Nick from Do You Remember? And today we're talking about the unlikely rise to prominence of two high school dropouts. If you enjoy this video, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel so you won't miss a single Do You Remember video. Now, let's meet Sonny and Cher, who together beat the odds to become two of the most famous stars of the 20th century, and neither could have done it alone. Childhood and the early years. Sherilyn Sarkisian was born in 1946 in El Centro, California. Despite the catchy ring of her given name, by high school, she gave in to the inevitable and started to go by the name that everyone called her already, Cher. And so a legend was, if not born, at least gestated. Cher struggled in school at an early age, not learning till many years later that she suffered from dyslexia. However, Cher still found an outlet in the performing arts, once organizing and even playing every male role in the musical Oklahoma after, well, every boy opted out. At the age of 16, Cher dropped out of high school and moved to LA in order to, in her words, become famous. She soon started to meet with agents and producers, working part-time jobs in the meantime to support herself. And it was while working as a waitress in a coffee shop that a chance encounter with Chasity Bono would set her on the road to international stardom. Salvatore Bono was born in 1935 in Detroit, Michigan, but at the age of 7, his family moved to Inglewood, California, right into the heart of the blossoming LA music scene. At an early age, his mother called him by the nickname Sono, which over time morphed into the name that the world would remember him by, Sonny. He too dropped out of high school and struggled for more than a decade to make it in the music industry, forced to work odd jobs, and as a gopher for music execs for years. It seemed as if Sonny's career was going nowhere, until one day he had a cup of coffee that would change his life. When Sonny Bono first walked into the cafe where Cher worked in 1962, she described it as Tony and Maria meeting for the first time in West Side Story. Everyone else just faded away, and she had eyes only for him. And if you haven't checked out our preview video about the upcoming Spielberg-directed reboot of West Side Story, be sure to check that out after this one. So, the two got to talking, and it came up that Cher was about to lose her apartment. So Sonny invited her to live with him as a housekeeper. And over the next few years, they progressed steadily from acquaintances to friends and finally to the first blossoming of romance. Because of course, the best foundation for any relationship is the employee and employer dynamic. Career beginnings. Even before entering into a romantic relationship with each other, the chemistry between the two was undeniable, and they decided to try to make it in the music business together. Sonny was currently making ends meet by singing backup for Phil Spector, and the two appeared together on the Ronettes' Be My Baby. Sonny began to write songs just for Cher, but due to her intense stage fright at the time, she insisted that they perform them as a duo called Caesar and Cleo. During these performances, Cher was too afraid to look directly at the crowd, instead never taking her eyes off Sonny. She said that she sang to the crowd through him. But despite their onstage chemistry and a switch to the iconic names Sonny and Cher, their singles released during this time, like Do You Wanna Dance and Let the Good Times Roll, were poorly received. In 1965, Sonny and Cher were going nowhere fast. It seemed like they couldn't find an audience in the US. Despite singing fairly straightforward folk rock, the American public was having a hard time accepting their eccentric appearance. You see, Sonny and Cher were some of the first artists who wore whatever they wanted. Or at least whatever Cher wanted them to. At this time, she was designing her own eclectic clothes and had discovered in a local thrift shop the bobcat fur vest and boots that would become Sonny's early signature look. This unique style of dressing was not appreciated in the States, Sonny later stating that they were banned from appearing on ABC because of their clothing. It was at this time that their rock and roll pals, the Rolling Stones, suggested going to England to promote their new single in an attempt to find a new audience. And as everyone knows, when Mick Jagger gives you advice, you better take it. A taste of success. When Sonny and Cher arrived in London, it turned out not to be all that different from the US. When they arrived at their hotel, draped in their signature eccentric outfits, their reservation was mysteriously lost, and they were told that they could not stay. But the British press got wind that a new American act was being refused lodging because of their clothing, and soon were swarming the scene. The next day, Sonny and Cher were plastered on the front of the tabloids, and the British public went nuts for them. Overnight, they became instant stars. In a country where mod fashion had been paramount among musicians, the Sonny and Cher look, bell-bottoms, ruffled shirts, striped pants, fur vests, they became all the rage. This led to their new single, I've Got You Babe, flying to the top of the charts. First in England, unseating the matching suit-wearing Beatles, then shortly thereafter in the US.
Babe, I got you, babe.
They had arrived. Sonny and Cher's overnight success in England led to a meteoric rise to the top of the pop stardom in the US. Within the next 3 years, they had charted 5 top 10 singles and sold more than 40 million albums worldwide. They had also managed to have an astounding 5 different songs in the top 50 at the same time, a feat that had only been achieved by Elvis and the Beatles. Time magazine even dubbed them the it couple of rock and roll, and it seemed like they could do no wrong. Trouble, however, was brewing on the horizon, and it wouldn't be long before the duo's triumphs would appear to be a fleeting memory. Career disappointment. Despite revolutionizing the way people dressed, at their heart, Sonny and Cher were a conservative act. As the hippie movement spread during the Summer of Love, Sonny and Cher's influence waned as society passed them by. The youth was into free love, not happily married couples.
Because all our fan mail, kids are very happy that we're married and that we love each other.
And even worse, they came out very publicly against the drug culture, highlighted by Chasity Bono even hosting a half-hour-long anti-marijuana PSA broadcast on national television.
Let's face it, the reasons we've heard for blowing grass up to now are like an iceberg. What about the underlying reasons?
Please check out our PSA throwback video for a real jolt of nostalgia. But lastly, and most damning, was that music had evolved drastically in the past 3 years. By 1969, Sonny and Cher were still singing the folk rock love songs popular in the early to mid-60s, while the airwaves were dominated by much heavier and rebellious sounds. Jimi Hendrix, Led Zeppelin, and Janis Joplin represented a seismic shift in rock music, and Sonny and Cher seemed unable to adapt. Resurgence. The beat goes on. By the end of the decade, their music was no longer charting and the hits had completely dried up. They were also heavily in debt from 2 failed movies, including self-financing Chasity, which completely flopped. They owed more than $200,000 to the IRS alone. This reduced them to the status of a glorified lounge act, forced to tour the country playing nightclubs in order to stay afloat. Was this the end of Sonny and Cher? Well, hardly. An executive at CBS happened to catch their club act one night and became intrigued. To compensate for the declining popularity of their music, Sonny and Cher's act was evolving into a variety show, with bits of comedy and the beginnings of skits interspersed with their hit songs. They had found a formula that the audience loved, and the bigwigs at CBS, they took note. After a brief spell on the massively popular Carol Burnett show, the duo were offered their own comedy program and leapt at the chance.
Sonny and Cher.
The Sonny and Cher Comedy Hour became a massive hit, staying in the top 20 in ratings for its entire run, and racking up numerous Emmy Awards. The show featured a slew of well-known performers and guest stars.
You do get to wear expensive clothes and do absolutely nothing.
True. It's sort of like being a congressman.
During the run of the show, Cher, in a minor controversy, was actually the first woman to ever show her belly button on network TV. Not only did the show rescue the duo from lounge act purgatory, it also proved that the Sonny and Cher 60s success, it was no fluke, and it returned them to the peak of the pop culture mountain in the US. However, behind the scenes, the relationship that had been the bedrock of their success was starting to come apart at the seams. To the whole world, Sonny and Cher appeared to be the perfect couple, but this was unfortunately far from the truth. And by 1975, the couple had been separated for almost 2 years because of Sonny's controlling nature and numerous affairs. Cher agreed to keep up appearances, however, until it came to light that Sonny had arranged their business so that he made 95% of the duo's earnings, with the remaining 5% going to the lawyer. That's right, Sonny 95%, lawyer 5%, Cher zilch, squat, nada. Cher had finally had enough. After this revelation, Cher immediately filed for divorce, citing involuntary servitude. The acrimonious divorce that followed shocked the nation and brought the wildly popular Sonny and Cher comedy hour to an abrupt halt. And although they would briefly reunite professionally after each failing with their own solo show, nothing was ever the same, and the final last-ditch effort was quickly canceled. Despite making a handful of appearances together throughout later years, including a final performance on Letterman in 1987.
I got you, babe.
The wonderful partnership of Sonny and Cher was effectively over, and a little magic had gone out from the world. So that's it. Do you have a favorite Sonny and Cher song? If so, please let us know in the comments. And because I know you've loved this video, it would really tickle us pink if you'd hit the thumbs up button. And please subscribe to see even more awesome throwback videos. From everyone here at Do You Remember, thanks for watching.